Welcome to episode 37 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm going to be interviewing Jaime Primak Sullivan. She's the star of the reality show Jersey Belle on the Bravo channel. She's been a publicist for years. Recently, she got several projects off the ground just by pitching. So she's got lots of great tips for how to craft your pitch, and her tips can be applied to lots of things like writing your logline and query letter. So it's not just pitching in person or over the phone, although that's what she's done. The interview is packed with lots of real actionable advice to help you sell your screenplay, so stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast. I'd like to thank Stanford Crane and John Kelmer, who left me some nice comments over on YouTube. Thank you guys for those. I'd like to thank Viviana, Marshawn Thomas, Clint Williams, Final Fenway Fixin, J.J. Hillard, and Marty Wolf, who all retweeted the last week's podcast episode. I'd like to thank the folks who have liked our Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/sellingyourscreenplay. Thanks Benjamin Mayer, Rushanish Klein, Michael Marlowe, Chet, Kyrie Mallon, Max Orcus, and Becky Hartkoff, who all liked last week's episode on Facebook. I'm sorry if I'm missing some people. Facebook doesn't seem to always show the names of the people who like the post. So really, thanks to everyone who liked last week's episode on Facebook. It really is very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found in my blog, on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts and just look for episode 37. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell Your Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide: how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. A quick few words about what I am working on. I'm actually sending out my sci-fi thriller this week. I posted it on the Blacklist a couple of weeks ago and got those reviews back. I paid for 2 reads and got a 5 from one and a 6 from another. Both readers seemed reasonably complimentary and didn't really offer much in terms of criticism, so I'm really not sure what to make of the scores. Some of the notes I've gotten back from the Blacklist readers on other scripts, it definitely felt like the readers hadn't really read the script, or if they had, they read it very, very quickly. But with these two, it definitely seemed clear that they had read the script and did understand it. They seemed to really get it, and they seemed pretty complimentary about it. So, you know, they gave me average scores, but seemed pretty positive overall. Anyway, the email and fax blast is literally going out as I record this podcast, so we'll see how that turns out. I emailed all my contacts with the pitch too, and have gotten some people reading it already from that. I also pitched the script over the phone to a producer I've been working with on another project, and he seemed to like the pitch, so I've sent it over to him as well. So anyways, wish me luck with the email and fax blast. At least for me, that seems to be the best way to get my scripts out there. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm going to be talking with Jaime Primak Sullivan, who, as you'll see from the interview, is an absolute expert at pitching. Here is the interview. Welcome, Jaime, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
So I wonder if, to start out, you can just give us a quick overview of your career and kind of how you ended up in the entertainment industry.
Well, I started as a teenager in New Jersey. I saw that there was a niche in marketing nightclubs and restaurants to the bridge and tunnel crowd. Nightclubs in Manhattan and restaurants there were doing a great job of getting the word out in Manhattan, but they weren't really marketing to bridge and tunnel. And because those businesses are secular and they depend on bridge and tunnel, you know, in the third quarter to really come in and keep the numbers up, I thought, what a great niche for me. And because I was underage, I worked out the deal where if I promoted their nightclub or restaurant to Bridge and Tunnel, they would let me and my friends come in on the weekends and party. So it worked out for everybody. It was it was great. And then I realized very quickly that I had a niche for that. So that's sort of where Bridge and Tunnel Entertainment was born.
Okay. And then how did you segment into, ultimately getting your own reality show? You had mentioned selling some scripts. So how did you get into screenwriting and selling a script?
Well, I've always been a storyteller. I just never knew the process to put it on paper. So in regards to the scripts, basically what happened was, because I was an entertainment publicist, I was dealing with my clients' agents all the time. And one day I asked a brilliant agent by the name of Joanne Wiles at ICM, a veteran in the industry. She's been doing this 20 plus years. I asked her, hey, Joe, I have this idea for a horror movie. What should I do? And she said, well, if you don't know how to write a script, write a great treatment. And I said, well, what's a treatment? And she said, tell me the story. Give me the big beats. So I was the girl, reading Save the Cat and looking at the beat sheets, trying to teach myself sort of what the process was because I had no idea. Mm-hmm. But I knew that the concept for Fear Followers, which is the first project I sold, was commercial. Like I know what commercial concepts are because I work with them on a daily basis. So I taught myself pretty much what a treatment was. And then I wrote one, and I was the girl who thought that I had written, the Steven Spielberg of all treatments. Like, this is epic, right? And I sent it to Joe and said, would you take a look at this? And she wrote me back and was like, this is garbage. And I was like, it's garbage? What do you mean? And she was like, it's garbage. There's no, it's like one big run-on sentence. It's not scary. And I was like, oh. And it was a humbling experience for me because you come out of the gate thinking, I have the tools, so certainly, I can build it. Mm-hmm. But you can't because you need structure in screenplay. And I don't do well with structure. Even in a treatment, you need structure. And so I went back to the books, back to the greats. I read Story by Robert McKee, which took me, I feel like, 10 years to read. But it was food for the soul, really. I learned so much about it. I rewrote the treatment for Fear Followers. And Joanne said, well, you're getting there. Now that we're closer than we were. And I said, just get me in a room because I pitch for a living. Just get me in a room. So the first meeting I took was with Jason Blum. So if anybody out there knows horror, this is when Jason was doing, anything that was anything in horror. And I got in a room with Jason and I pitched him Fear Followers. And before I got to the car, Joanne called me and said, he loved it, kid. Great job. And then we sent the treatment, and Relativity also loved the concept. So Jason and Tucker from Relativity decided to partner on the project. And then, in true Hollywood fashion, things fall through the cracks. Sometimes people don't necessarily agree on the back end, front end, any end. And it ended up at Relativity, both as the production side and the studio side. And so we're getting our final draft of that script now, and hopefully we'll be in production in 2015. And it's very exciting to me because it's a very forward-thinking concept, and just to see it come from an idea that I had in my shower and go through the process, and now it's very exciting.
So when you went into pitch, though, you had no screenplay at this point. You just had this treatment, which you had spent some considerable time with, but there was no screenplay to actually show them.
Nope, nothing. I sold it on pitch.
Okay.
But remember, I've crafted the art of pitching because I do it every single day. And the best thing about pitching when you get into a room, the number one thing is enthusiasm for your own project. Pitch it in a mirror. Look at allow yourself to see the way someone else is seeing your pitch. Because if you're smiling and you're enthusiastic and you're taking them through the twists and turns of the movie and the way you're delivering the material is gripping, they will feel that. Yes, you're sitting across the table from somebody, but it doesn't mean that you can't deliver a pitch. Some people, there's that nervous factor, getting in, especially without a screenplay, because pitching right now in Hollywood, my agents first told me, I'm at CAA now, but my agents first told me, like, Jamie, nobody buys a pitch. I had this idea for Jersey Belle, and my agents were the ones that were like, yeah, we're not going to set any meetings. We're not setting the meetings because networks don't buy pitches. And I decided decided to go around the back door. I found a production company that had done a show with Bravo. I knew I wanted Jersey Belle to live on Bravo. I knew exactly what the show was. I knew I wanted to be a creative producer on the project, and I didn't think I was asking for very much. So I went to this production company. I set a Skype call with them. I pitched the concept, and I believed in what I was selling. I made them see what the show was, and they loved it. And we shot a great sizzle, and then we took it to Bravo, and Bravo fell in love with it. And, it has filled a niche on the network that it filled the exact niche I knew it would for the people who had enough of maybe the drama and the fighting that the tremendously successful Real Housewives franchise has provided for 10 plus years. And it's not replacing anything. It's like the stepsister that kind of comes in and fits right in. And then, I think the key to pitching too, honestly, is research. Do the research, because with Fear Followers, pitching Jason made sense because it was a micro-budget horror film. And Jason Blum was, and probably still is right now, the king of micro-budget horror films. So I did my research. I knew that he was my best chance at getting it sold. If somebody says, I have a micro-budget horror film, and your friend says, well, I have a great relationship at Disney, don't take the pitch. It doesn't fit. It's not going to work. Do the research, and if you're going to pitch, especially without a screenplay, make sure that you are pitching your exact target buying audience.
Let's step back a second. You just made a comment that you set up a Skype chat with these guys to pitch your TV show. And I'm curious, there's going to be two steps to this. I mean, a lot of the people that are going to be listening to this are nowhere near as connected, but I wonder if you can just tell us, how did you set up that Skype call? Because there's kind of two levels. There's the pitch, which obviously is very important, but there's also actually getting in to the point where you can pitch. And I wonder if you could give us, tell us how you did that, and then maybe give us some suggestions for people that, are not in the industry. How can they get get an actual pitch with some of these people?
Okay, so we'll use Jersey Belle as the example, right? I knew that it was going to be a singular lead show, meaning not a cast, not an ensemble, and I knew I wanted it to live on Bravo. So what I did was, let's say I had no connections in Hollywood. What I did was I looked at Bravo's programming, and I looked at what other shows they had that were singular leads, and then what of those shows had the most successful run. So what I came up with was Flipping Out with Jeff Lewis. Flipping Out is in its 7th season. Jeff Lewis is the star of that show. He has a small supporting cast, but he's the star. And I said, let me see who's producing this show for Bravo, because that tells me they get exactly what I'm trying to do, and they have the relationship with the network I want to be on. I did some research, tracked down Authentic, and found out who the head of casting was, because they need a slate the same way that Bravo needs a slate. So Authentic, their hope is that people with great ideas track them down and find them, because they need projects. So I found out who the head of casting was at Authentic, and I got his information. I mean, you can get people's information from IMDb or Who Represents, whatever it is. I got his information, and I emailed him, and I had a very succinct, to-the-point email. This is my name. This is who I am. This is what I do, where I live. This is the show I want to pitch. Here's the title. Does this sound interesting to you? He wrote back, it actually does sound very interesting to me. And I knew that the character of Jersey Belle was going to be everything. So I knew he would have to see my energy. So I said, I think a Skype call is best. He said, I agree. We set it up. The next day, we spent 30 minutes on a Skype call, and he was sold. And then he sold it, to his bosses and said, this girl, we could do this. So for me, it's all about what makes the most sense for your project. Like, do we all want to make movies with Steven Spielberg? Yes. But it's just not realistic. So find the people in the tier that is realistic for your project and see if they have a head of development or a head of casting. And be very succinct. You only get one chance to make a good first impression on your pitch. So make sure that you have a log line that works and test it out on everyone you know. Test your log line out on everyone you know, not your friends, because they're going to tell you it's the best log line they've ever heard, not your mother, but peers, colleagues, writing blogs, groups online, people at the supermarket. Literally say, would you pay money to see a movie if this was the log line? Does this make you want to know more?
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. You keep mentioning the head of casting. I can see that making sense for a reality show, but if you're pitching a fiction screenplay, it would be more like the head of development or something. Correct me if I'm wrong.
At a studio, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So the problem is a lot of studios won't take pitches without an agent. See, I was lucky enough to have an agent. The number one question I get asked is, what do I do if I don't have an agent? And the project I'm working on now for television is called Breaking and Entering, and it provides people with tremendous success an opportunity to tell their story of how they turn no's into yeses. So I'll give you one of mine. Let's say I want to make a film at New Line, and Dave Newstatter is the guy, right? That's the guy, the head of development. That's the guy you got to get in the room with. Do some research. Go on LinkedIn. Go on Facebook. Any mutual friends, anyone that you can reach out to and say, hey, I see that you're a third-tier connection on LinkedIn with Dave Newstatter at New Line, and I have a project that I know is going to be perfect for them. But be prepared to say why you think it's perfect for New Line. Don't just say because you loved Freddy Krueger in the 80s and your project is just like Nightmare on Elm Street. Because guess what? Dave Newstatter was just like not even a thought in his, he was a toddler when that came out. So do your research. And once you do that, find somebody who knows him. And if you can't, if you come up completely empty-handed, then you can get his email address. And you can send him an email that says, I don't have an agent, but I do have a project that is perfect for New Line, and here's why. In the last 5 years, you made this movie, and this movie, all in the same vein of what I'm pitching you. Those movies have made this much, and this much, so collectively, this much. And I believe that this movie, with my amazing log line, is going to be the fourth movie in that tier of what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. I think the budget would be this. I mean, answer every question he could possibly have, because what he may do is say, you know what? You could be on to something. So what I'm going to do is loop you in with an agent friend that I have at CAA or ICM or William Morris, and I'm going to let them read it. And if they think it is what you say it is, then let's set a meeting. Mm-hmm. Because I know these guys. I work with them. And they want good material. They want original good material. So, yes, obviously, the easier path is to have an agent. But sometimes it's harder to get an agent than it is to get a meeting with an executive in studio. Mm-hmm.
For sure. So when you were pitching, I mean, what you just described, there's going to be a lot of rejection in there where the guy doesn't respond or doesn't like your pitch. I wonder, did you pitch this to different companies, or you honed in on the one company that you felt was an exact match for this, and just, you were lucky enough that they liked your pitch. You didn't have to take it anywhere else.
Well, I pitched Fear Followers to Jason Blum and Blumhouse, and they loved it. And the only other place I pitched it was Relativity. And because Relativity can also be a studio, not just a production company, it made sense for them to partner with Jason, let Jason produce it, and let them serve as the studio. When Jason backed out because they couldn't make whatever deal they wanted to make, Relativity said, no, we love it. We're going to stay on. We'll produce it and distribute and be the studio. So I got very lucky there. Before We Do, which is a rated R comedy, the log line for Before We Do, and I'm going to tell it to people because I feel like it is exactly what you want in a log line. The log line, first of all, let's look at the title for Before We Do. I feel like the title tells you pretty much what you're getting, right? The words I do represent what?
Yeah, marriage.
Marriage. So before we do, lead you to believe that this is some sort of wedding something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also look at international. Will it translate internationally? Before we do, yes. People say I do all over the world. The log line for before we do is an engaged couple take separate road trips across the country to the week before their wedding to fulfill their pre-wedding bucket list. I mean,
Yeah.
does it tell you exactly what it is? You know what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
It's succinct. It's to the point. It tells you exactly what the movie is. It doesn't tell you that there's a major, amazing car chase on page 62. You know what I mean? Like, I think people, they sort of oversaturate their log lines. You don't need to do that. You just need to give the executive big picture. So if I was sending an email to you, and Ashley Myers was the executive at let's say, Warner Brothers, right? And I said, hey, Ashley, I have a great movie called Before We Do. Big commercial concept. People get married all over the world. And the number one thing people can relate to about weddings is the anxiety before the wedding. It's a universal feeling, right? Here's the log line. An engaged couple takes separate trips across the country the week before their wedding to fulfill their pre-wedding bucket list. The only other thing I want you to know, Ashley, is there's no infidelity because Middle America does not want to spend $15 on a movie ticket to watch two people that we've just convinced should be married now cheating on each other. Mm-hmm. Guess what?
And that was my first thought. So there you are answering my questions because that was my first thought when you mentioned it.
That's my first thought too as a publicist.
Yeah.
I want to promote a film about two people we've convinced an audience they should be rooting for who are now out cheating on each other. No and no. So, but there it is. So you're the executive and you go, hey, you know what? We're looking for a rated R sort of raunchy, fun comedy. Everybody loves a road trip movie. This sounds like a fresh concept. It's universal. It'll do well domestically. It'll do great internationally. It's castable. It's the kind of movie that a director wants to get on board with. Fairly decent budget. This is a pitch I want to hear. Mm-hmm. So when I went to Basil Iwanek at Thunder Road and said, he had just come off the success of The Town. I knew he knew how to make a big film. Even though comedy wasn't necessarily his genre, I know the budgets he works with. I know the space and the relationships he has with certain directors. So I reached out and said, can I get in a room? Via my agent, we did it the right way. Can we get in a room? And Thunder Road said, yeah. And it happened to be serendipitous that Basil's from Freehold, New Jersey, which I am also from Freehold, New Jersey. So we knew a lot of the same people. And, I think that did play a part in him taking the meeting. But he loved the project and took it on. Mm-hmm. So that was that pitch.
Perfect. I want to back up just a second. You've given us some great tips for like the query letter and all that information, some great tips on the log line. Can you give us, tell us specifically what was in like your bio pitch? When you were sending your script out, you said you had this is who I am. Tell us what was in your bio and then give us some general tips for people that maybe don't have the same, impeccable credentials that you have. What can they put in their bio?
Honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't think anybody gives a shit about the bio. I think it comes down to, is this a commercial concept? Is the title marketable? Can I see the trailer for this film through your log line? At the end of the day, they're getting, an executive at a studio gets anywhere from, I would say, probably 300 to 400 emails a day. Most internal. Then from there, I would say probably from agents, managers. And then from there, I would say, 5% is from people trying to get meetings, right? Mm-hmm. They don't care that you wrote for your school newspaper and you published something in a magazine. They don't care. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't made a movie, it doesn't matter to them. Get to the point. My bio had absolutely nothing to do with me selling fear followers to relatives. Mm-hmm.
You don't think having an agent at CAA, you don't think that colors it just a little bit?
But see, that's not in my bio. Because the CAA made the call. So yes, they knew that I had an agent at CAA, but my bio basically...
I guess for Jersey Belle, I was saying for Jersey Belle, you went outside of your agent. So that might have been mentioned in your bio section for Jersey Belle.
But even then, I didn't send a bio. Even then, I got right to the point. Here's the show I want to do. It's called Jersey Belle. Here's the niche I think it fits. Here's the network I think it fits on. Here's the concept for the show. Here's the log line. Do you think it works? It was very succinct because I have learned, and it's a humbling lesson to learn, because you want to sell yourself, but the truth is they don't care. They don't care if the next big raunchy rated R comedy comes from what's his name, Judd Apatow, or from the super funny chick that was in Bridesmaid, who everyone tells me I look like, and now I can't think of her name. I can see her face, but I can't think of her name. But you know who I'm talking about, the girl who wrote and starred in Bridesmaids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're having a brain fart too. We lost this game. They don't care where the material comes from. They want it to be what they are looking for. And your job is to, in the most effective way, present your material in the most commercial way possible. Tell them how it's going to make them money, because that is what it boils down to. The last project that I can't tell you too many details because we're still in the closing stage, so people will kill me. But I can tell you how the pitch went down. I had a thriller with a African-American female lead, which I think is a huge underserved market. So that's another thing. Do you have a commercial idea that could easily be cast with a minority? Because if you do, you should really think about that, because it's an underserved market, and minorities have proven time and time again that they will show up and support films that star minority leads. So with that being said, this project was written for a female. It's a strong female lead who happens to be African American. So I said, who in film right now is killing it in the minority space? If Will Packer doesn't immediately come to your mind, then you have not done research on production companies, because Will Packer is killing it. So I went to Will and said, here's the film. Here's who I see as the lead, these three actresses. This is what the title is. This is what the film is. This is what I see as the budget. And Will said, you nailed it. Let's do it. So this is really, but again, I did my research.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't go to Dave Newstatter at New Line, because even though Will could go to New Line with the project, Dave is not going to buy that pitch from me. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. The other thing is, in this day and age, what studios are looking for is who can produce this for us. A lot of people have deals, you know, a lot of producers have first look deals at studios. I think a lot of times the best way to actually get your project sold is to go through the production company, the way that I did for Jersey Belle, the way that I did for Fear Followers, the way I did for Thunder Road, and now for this last project. I found a producer who could get the project made and let them come into the studio with me. Because the truth be told, John Moan at Universal doesn't care what Jamie's doing, but he does care what somebody like Craig Perry, who produced all the American Pie movies for Universal and made them over $1 billion, is doing. So I've now just partnered with Craig Perry on a film. Like I said, Craig produced all the American Pie films and all the Final Destination films with New Line. So you walk into Universal with Craig Perry, he made them over $1 billion. They're going to listen. Okay, Craig, what you got?
Yeah. So let's talk about Jersey Belle for a minute. Just give us your 2-minute pitch on that, and then tell us how people can watch it and see it.
I love that. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jersey Belle is a fish out of water story about a New Jersey native who happens to be a Hollywood publicist who moves to Birmingham, Alabama for love, and tries to fit in one of the most elite, proper parts of the country, in the way that only a Jersey girl could. You can watch it on Bravo Monday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 Central, and it's the first comedy that Bravo's ever done. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of heart, and if you've ever been the person that felt like you didn't fit in, somewhere, then this is the show for you.
And just so people understand it, it's you that is playing it's you. It's a reality show, and it is about you.
It is. It's me. So, I am New Jersey native who happens to be a Hollywood publicist who moved to Birmingham, Alabama for love. And it's funny.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'll link to that too in the show notes so people can go over and find it on the Bravo website. I had one other question that I just occurred to me was, in this process, are you now writing the scripts? Like you said originally, you just came in as treatment. Have you evolved so now you're writing the scripts? You're not just coming up with the treatment and the pitches. You're actually writing the full scripts as well.
Well, I did not write the script for Fear Followers. They bought the treatment and made me a co-producer and hired a horror writer to write the script. And truth be told, it was the best move for a million reasons. And certainly I did not have the time at the time to write the script. Writers are amazing to me. They commit everything they have to writing every single day. And I have a business to run and don't have that luxury right now.
Yeah.
We did write the script for Before We Do with a writing partner in New York. So we are the writers on that script. This last project with Will Packer, I did not write the script. I wrote the treatment, which was a great treatment, and we have hired a great thriller writer who knows the ins and outs of the twists and turns that this movie needs, that right now, again, I don't have the time to dedicate to. The next project that I'm doing with Craig Perry, which is another comedy, I am writing that script.
Okay, perfect. I just was curious. What's the best way for people to keep up with you? Are you on Twitter? You can give us your Twitter handler and they can find you.
I'm at Jaime Primak on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook at Jaime Primak Sullivan.
Perfect. And I'll get those links from you and I'll put them in the show notes so people can click right over. So, well, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. This has been very informative. I've got a script finished and I'm going to start sending it out next week. And some of the things you just said, have got me thinking about my query letter and how I'm going to pitch that. So I know I've learned something. So I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this.
If you have an agent, research production companies that will actually make your movie. Go to the producers.
Good advice. Good advice. Thank you, Jaime. I really appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks so much, Ashley.
I mentioned in the last episode that I was going to be running a full 1-year intensive screenwriting workshop. There are only a couple of spots left as I record this episode. So if you'd like to learn more about that, check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/gold. The first part of this 1-year class is actually the next class that I'll be teaching, which is all about choosing a marketable concept. I'm going to be running an entire series of classes which will guide you through the entire screenwriting process, from choosing a marketable concept all the way through writing your third act. So if you want to participate, check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/classes. You can buy just the class, just the one single class, and of course you can follow along. If you're diligent, this really is a great way to follow along with the premium program, and in 6 months you'll end up with a polished and hopefully solid screenplay. The class will be on Saturday, September 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So again, check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/classes to learn more about that. In the next episode of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast, I'm going to be interviewing legendary film director Brian Trenchard Smith. Check out his credits on IMDb if you're not familiar with his work. He's got about 50 feature film directing credits, and we talk about his latest film, Drive Hard, starring John Cusack. So keep an eye out for that in the next episode. So I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the things that Jaime said in the interview. I've been writing query letters for a long time, and I think I'm pretty good at it. Essentially, everything I've sold has been through a query letter. But I got some great tips from her, so hopefully you did too. Some of the things I just want to highlight are, first, the importance of the title. Blake Snyder in Save the Cat talks about this, but it's really just such an important part of your pitch. So many writers waste it with something that really doesn't add to the presentation. So really take some time to think about your title and make sure that it really adds to your logline and your overall presentation. I really respect how much research she does into all the companies she's pitching. If you're going to do personalized pitches like what she's doing, you've really got to do the research. I'll touch on this more in a bit. I'll touch on this more in a moment. I really like her suggestion to position her film against other successful films. This is definitely something you should be doing. And if you can back it up with some quick box office numbers, that's a great help too. Hopefully understanding the marketplace and where your project fits into the marketplace is something you've done before you've even written your script. I actually go into this quite a bit in the class I'll be teaching on the 27th. I really like her tip about telling people how castable certain roles are. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm actually doing a blast right now, and I incorporated this tip into my query letter. I've seen other writers do it, and I've even done it myself, but for some reason I've forgotten to do this with this current query letter. There's a great role for a 30-something woman in this current script. And there is always a real shortage of roles for women, so I decided to really highlight this in my query letter. I have a decent number of credits, so that's usually half my query letter, but I think she's basically right. The bio isn't all that important. I didn't remove my bio completely, but I did shorten it down a great deal. Ultimately, they want to know what the story is about, and if you really have a great pitch, your bio isn't going to be nearly as important as you might think. In some ways, this is about showing, not telling. You won't have to tell them that you are rep by CAA for them to know that you know what you're doing. Give them an excellent pitch and they'll know you know what you're doing. Really, all you're trying to do with your bio is establish credibility, and in some ways, if your pitch is good enough, it will speak for itself. One thing I would like to point out is that her approach is definitely very different from mine. My email and fax blast service, and that's what I've been using to promote my scripts, is really very much a shotgun approach. I'm sending out literally thousands of query letters while she's razor focused, doing her research, and really honing her pitch for people that it's exactly right for. I don't think there is really a right answer here or a wrong way or a right way to do this. I just think about your own personality and what will mesh best with it. I should probably try and do some more focused pitches like what she's discussed in this interview and add that into my marketing routine. If I have time, I probably will. I'd be curious to see how much traction I can get with this sort of approach. So maybe over the next couple of weeks and months, I will give it a try. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for listening.